on camera where he's like, are you really still asking about Jeffrey Epstein? By the way, the day after he put out that Truth Social, he was tweeting about revoking Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship. Cash literally said in 2023, the Epstein files are under the direct control of the FBI director. He became the FBI director. And now he's like, it was all a conspiracy theory. He literally said that.
So recently, Saagar Enjeti went on the Flagrant podcast to talk about why he believes Trump's response to the Epstein story is totally pathetic, why it's creating something of a schism in the MAGA movement, and where the Trump administration can possibly go from here to salvage his reputation. Now, Saagar is not only a pretty big expert when it comes to the Epstein story, he's also a Trump supporter, so I can't wait to get his take on this. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It's like, you are fake, or, you know, you're not trusting the plan enough. And it's like, I would argue that the least patriotic thing you could do is actually trust the government. I would actually argue also in the case of when you support a political movement is that the least impactful thing you could do is trust the plan. And because the people who don't trust the plan, they get shit done. You think Israel trusted the plan?
Nope.
When we were trying to do diplomacy, they were like, no, we're fucking bombing Iran, okay?
And
you're coming in with us. Yeah, exactly. They always win.
And that's the thing. And I promise you, I don't promise you, but I would imagine in the next week or two, we will get some disclosure about the Epstein files that we were not going to get.
Right.
And the reason we got that is because there are people speaking out. There's a reason why the White House responded to us.
Yeah, that's right.
The people are speaking out. It's not just us, but it's a lot of people speaking out about our frustrations. And whether you like this or not, the White House, the current administration, is very transactional. If they feel that people are becoming disillusioned, they acknowledge it immediately. So if you do not voice these things, you do not get what the fuck you want.
Get it.
It's like, and what do you actually want? At the end of the day, what do you want? Do you want to feel good in the moment? Do you want to get your little clicks and views, make your little face-to-camera videos, or do you want to actually have some form of justice for 1,000 girls that were victimized?
According to the government, according to our U.S. Attorney General,
1,000 that were victimized. What do you actually want? Because I'm glad you feel good with your pats on the back. To me, it'd be pretty good to know if 1,000 girls gets a little bit of justice. That would make me feel pretty good.
Well, the problem is it doesn't look like we're going to get much, and, Schultz might be right. They do, react a little bit differently once there's some pushback. We've seen that in this story. What we're going to get is not going to be substantial no matter what, because we know the FBI is sitting on mountains of information from the search warrants, etc. But Donald Trump, despite now calling this a Democratic hoax, came out and said, hey, we're subject to court review, but we're going to try to get grand jury testimony related to the Epstein case. Now, this could take months. It's subject to the court agreeing to this, divulging grand jury testimony regarding Epstein, and the product will likely be filled with redacted pages of letters. Lots of attorneys have weighed in on this and the process and what could come from this, and that is true. I don't think we're actually going to see answers, despite the fact we know they're sitting on tons of information and evidence that hasn't even been divulged. Some of the evidence in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial hasn't been made public. Some of it is, some of it isn't. We know that the FBI executed a search warrant on multiple of his properties, including raids in 2018, and we haven't been privy to what came from that, despite the fact that there are descriptions of some of the items found, including a safe with digital media with labels printed on it with prominent people's names on it. And yeah, the FBI did not raid his house in New Mexico. It did raid many of his other properties, though. And, it's just going to get withheld from us. So yeah, I'm with Saagar. Don't trust the government. Thomas Paine, who I actually wrote a biography on, said, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, and its worst one, an intolerable one. And I think we're seeing that play out in this whole thing.
Yeah, it should.
So before we leave, could I ask, what is Trump's game with the Epstein files? Why would he, while he's president, get, Epstein is arrested, killed, dies, and then runs on releasing the files, does the fake sort of kangaroo release, and then now says that he was not working with any other conspirators?
There's only two possible theories, which I was not that open to this one, which was that Trump is implicated in until the more recent statements. Why are my boys and gals paying attention to all this? You guys all need to move on. Or on camera where he's like, are you really still asking about Jeffrey Epstein? By the way, the day after he put out that Truth Social, he was tweeting about revoking Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship.
That's funny.
So it's funny, but he's like, you guys are focused on Epstein when there's all this other stuff happening. It's like, bro, you're literally tweeting about Rosie O'Donnell's getting denaturalized as a citizen. But that's one theory, is that, look, I mean, I read you guys the
said
quote.
something where
he
goes,
likes them young. He said that in 2002. He said it. So maybe he knew something.
We're 6 months in.
Yeah.
How do you feel? What's the job that
wait,
Trump is doing?
sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I need to give the second.
Oh, my
that was
bad.
the first
Okay.
theory, which I did not give credence to.
Yeah.
Also, Tucker made a good point. He's like, wouldn't have the Biden administration released it? I was like, well, I thought that they would have, but listen, what if they wanted to protect Bill Clinton or
sure they
all this other stuff?
You can't release one.
Right. You have to release it all.
Because what would the Biden administration do? They'd release one person, Trump, and then nobody
that
else.
That wouldn't make a lot of sense.
And then we'd be like, okay.
According to Trump.
Yeah, I think, all right, so if both parties were implicated, it completely makes sense that neither side is willing to divulge what they have in this matter. And I mostly agree with Saagar here, and I'm open to the possibility, hey, Trump was implicated, and that's why there's this stark 180 on this issue. But I think that Trump, and I think this of Democrats too, would be behaving the same way if people close to them were implicated too. Like friends of Trump, prominent Republican senators or lobbyists or congressmen were implicated. I think that could explain why Trump's behaving this way too. Again, I'm open to the possibilities. Everything I've seen very little evidence, if any, that Trump had any relations with Epstein after 2004 when they vied for the same property in Florida. I'm open to it. Obviously, they had a friendship. No one denies that they had a close friendship according to Epstein, not according to Trump. But at one point, Epstein did call him one of his best friends. I think Epstein also called Ghislaine Maxwell his best friend at other times too. So the evidence that we have on Trump's implication, at least in the crimes that took place in Little St. James, are basically non-existent. He didn't ever travel to Little St. James. He made that a point during the campaign, whereas other presidents have. And other people of prominence didn't meet him after his first conviction on child molestation charges, including Ehud Barak and others, obviously. So I don't know. I'm open to it, but, you can keep telling me I'm just being a Trump apologist when my channel's full of criticism toward Trump, but I think he'd be behaving this same way if it was protecting people close to him, the Republican Party, etc.
Would you be shocked if Hunter was on them?
Right. Obama created the files. Okay.
And Hillary made the files about Clinton.
The second is that it would be devastating to our relationship with Israel, or it was at a request of Israel, or it'd be devastating to our relationship if the CIA is that to be exposed. I mean, for example, everybody knows the CIA killed Kennedy. Why has the CIA fought the release of these documents for 60 years?
Because they did. We're just as that is.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Again.
Yeah, I mean, Pompeo pleaded with Trump to the bitter end in his first term not to release the JFK files, and I think we can see why. The CIA's surveillance of Oswald was much greater than we ever knew. It implicated the CIA in an additional assassination plot against Rafael Trujillo and some other things. It revealed Arthur Schlesinger wrote a memo about how the CIA was essentially a rogue entity embarking on its own foreign policy in contradiction to the electoral results. So, yeah, I think we can see the reasons beyond even the Kennedy situation in general. So he's right about that.
Let me be more precise in my language. I think that they were aware of and participated, at least in some form, in the plot that killed Kennedy. I'll put more
or at least the
responsible.
cover-up.
Not the kill, at the very least, involved in the plot, and of course in the cover-up. That's like actually not a question. So why did they do that? Because they knew that it would break the American public's irrevocable trust in the way that they conduct business, and that's why they fought for years to make sure that it didn't happen, or that to release the documents. I think it's the same here in this case. It's like, look, what we have is so bad to the CIA, to the FBI, to Mossad, to Saudi, to whomever, all these governments, and to the Israeli prime ministers and others, that it would just be so revelatory of the way that we conduct business. It would make it impossible for us to continue business as usual. And sir, business as usual is so important that we just have to release all of this stuff. And that's how the pressure comes down on Kash Patel, on Dan Bongino, on the Attorney General. And yeah, I mean, it leads to them saying, Kash literally said in 2023, the Epstein files are under the direct control of the FBI director. He became the FBI director. And now he's like, it was all a conspiracy theory. He literally said that. The conspiracy theories theories were never true. The conspiracy theories you invented, man. So you were either lying then or you're lying now. Bongino. I mean, I have the clips that people can play if they want to of the stuff that we can never let up on this story. We can never let go. Attorney General Pam Bondi from the White House lawn, which used to mean something. I have the client list on my desk. There are thousands of victims. There are all the files. We're ready to release them. And then, Akash, I think you said this. You were like, either it was all a lie or you exploited the rape of thousands of children to get elected.
Yeah.
That's so true, man. I am totally with Saagar here. The most plausible reason it's not being unveiled, I think, is because it's dangerous to the U.S. relationship with other countries and other intelligence services. And I'm not, pluralizing it on purpose here. I think most likely it's Mossad, it's Israel, it's the connections that Epstein had with Ehud Barak. Again, even after his first conviction, and when he got the sweetheart deal for child molestation, when there were over 40 witnesses that could attest to his sexual exploits with young girls, who he lured in with the promise of being able to massage this rich guy and then sexually assaulting them. That's what occurred. And, the connections to Ehud Barak, who was the head of the IDF intelligence, kind of a sister entity to Mossad and prime minister. And guess what? Epstein also had close relations, at least close in some regards, all relative to each other, of course, to 3 other Israeli prime ministers. He introduced Netanyahu to the executives of JP Morgan, I think at least one executive. And, he had a lot of other connections to figures that were prominent in working with Israeli intelligence, like Adnan Khashoggi, who, was a prominent arms trafficker that took care of kind of the Middle East side of the Iran-Contra scheme. So, yeah. Time and time again, Epstein surrounded himself with figures close to the intelligence community, to Israeli politicians, etc. And if that relationship was more concrete in the documentation, it clearly explains why they don't want this to get out. And he's also right about how they clamored about how you can never let this story go away. Keep talking about it. Biden's concealing this. Well, guess what? I think they were right then, and I think they were right now. If we're going back to what they said before, of course, they're covering this up now.
That's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
If you do, so there's no good answer here. Personally, I lean to the latter. I think it's an intelligence thing, and perhaps it has a crossover with Trump himself, which I did not believe until very recently.
When you say intelligence thing, and this seems more realistic to me, not that the intelligence has devised this blackmail scheme.
Yeah, exactly. As I laid out for the multiple hours.
But he was potentially an asset to multiple intelligence agencies.
Correct.
And they looked the other way at his sexual deviant behavior. So that
and then started to cover it up with the non-prosecution agreement.
Exactly.
And that's the complicity. That's the smoking gun.
Yeah.
And that's why it still remains. I mean, look, even the Justice Department admitted that was a bad deal. We never should have done it.
Right.
And you know what the irony is? It's the Justice Department themselves, Main Justice, the Washington, D.C. bit. They're the ones who told Acosta to do the non-prosecution agreement. But then they turn around and they blame Acosta. And
you need a patsy, man.
I almost feel bad for the guy, in a way, because it looks like he was just doing what he was told.
Yeah.
It does, and at one point he said that, I was told to lay off him because he's intelligence. But yeah, hey, I'm with Saagar here. This could be dangerous to the U.S. relationship with Israel, which, by the way, the regime wants to maintain now more than ever before, to be able to kind of justify what Netanyahu's doing in Gaza, the bloodbath there, to support, operations, continued military operations against Iran, which, by the way, that war is not shut down. That's what Trump's playing right now. But hey, Netanyahu said for almost my entire lifetime that Iran's weeks away from acquiring a nuclear weapon. We have to bomb them now. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. They chant death to America, etc. When Iran hasn't attacked the United States, they have to drum up this war propaganda. So yeah, again, I'm with Saagar. I think he has the right mentality here, and they're behaving in a way that is indicative of being defensive. It seems to be a cover-up. Unveil the mountains of evidence we know you have, DOJ and FBI. The evidence you claim to have. The evidence that Pam Bondi and Alina Habba claim to have.
And he probably wanted to continue the investigation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he still signed it. Yeah, I agree. He was complicit and he lived with it. And he got rewarded for it. He was the labor secretary.
For like a day?
For a while. 2017 to 2019.
Oh.
He reigned for over 2 years.
And then they got him out.
Well, yeah. And then he was the patsy. They were like, hey, you got to go.
Somebody's got to
go down for this.
And it's very rare that government ever admits mistakes in any regard. But even the Justice Department did, say, oh, hey, that sweetheart deal was wrong. After you basically treat him like a king. He got treated better than homeless people in that deal. He got a wing of the sheriff's department to himself, a custom-built TV, a work release program where he could fly between his various properties. It was so absurd. It couldn't be explained unless he was some sort of asset. And it wasn't the first time he cooperated with the feds. There was actually a plea deal as part of that, too, that he would divulge information to the feds that's in the documents. This isn't a conspiracy theory. But also when Tower Financial went down, that was an entity run by Stephen Hoffenberg, where it ended up being one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history. Hoffenberg, to his dying day, said Epstein was the main architect of that. Well, here's what happened. Epstein cooperated with the authorities, acted as an informant to them, and Hoffenberg went down for 18 years, not Epstein. So this is not even the first time that sort of situation, that kind of sweetheart deal, happened to Epstein.
He resigned. I think he's very rich and probably works in finance or whatever now. But my point is just that it goes up high, and unfortunately, we don't even really know how high. And what's left to be released is still just an immense amount of documentation, which, no, we don't have a right to have it, like a theoretical right, but we almost have like a promise here from the campaign, from the president, that they would release everything. They would declassify everything, and they have immediately turned their back on that.
I got to use the bathroom. You guys
We're 6 months in. Give me your grade on Trump. The good, the bad. What's his report card grade?
Well, I'm actually not important in this. Just let's look at the issues, for things that I think he was elected on. I think he was elected on three primarily. Number one is the economy, because inflation was high. Inflation report came out today. It's actually increased 2.7% since June. A lot of that is, in my opinion, because of the incompetent way that they've rolled out the tariffs. It actually makes me really upset. I'm really pro-tariff, the idea of tariff, strategic tariffs. I think the way that this has been done has been, frankly, a disaster. The only reason that it didn't crash the economy is because he rolled them all back and said, we're going to do a 90-day pause or whatever. But creating chaos in people's lives and fucking with people's businesses is terrible. Mark and I are new parents. Do you remember the stroller problem about how over 90% of strollers and car seats come from China? Oh, yeah. Well, the Up-A-Baby stroller that everyone in New York has, that went up by hundreds of dollars as a result of the tariffs. Sorry, I think that's wrong. I think the car seats have become more expensive. It's you were elected to make life better for people. That's a pretty material way, actually, that Trump directly impacted me.
Okay.
All right, so me and Saagar do agree on kind of this analysis. We don't agree on the tariffs, but we do agree. I'm surprised he actually said that the reason that it didn't crash the economy is because he pulled them back. Well, that should tell you everything you know about these tariffs. They impact small businesses and workers, too. Workers rely on cheap foreign goods, and to the extent you're willing to have protectionist tariffs like this, it's the same argument that I would make to liberals that want minimum wage. If you want the minimum wage to be $20 an hour, $15 an hour, or whatever arbitrary figure they come to, why not $10,000 an hour? And the same thing with tariffs. If you want them to be, 100%, why not make them 10,000%? Well, I think you can see that this, as an ad reductio absurdum argument, is showing that, there would be unlimited benefit to just blockading your entire country, shutting down all foreign trade. And guess what happens? Workers rely on cheap goods from China and India and partners that we trade with from overseas. They have to maintain their lifestyles with that, because at home we're inflating the currency. We, meaning our criminal central bank that's emitting currency and imposing a tax on the remaining wealth. He just acted, I think fairly. He responded to, inflation's up 2.7%. They consider that low, by the way, that the dollar is being devalued only to that extent rather than, say, 5%. But in a healthy economy that's based on sound money, the dollar would actually be gaining in value. There'd be deflation, actually. But great analysis either way. I think Saagar's fair-minded in this.
And all other new parents here in the United States. So that's where something, I think, creating that chaos economically has been a problem. On the bill, the bill philosophically to me, I just think really comes away from a lot of the Trump promise. And I think I heard you talking about the bill. I mean, let's just look at the math, right? Like they are like, oh, well, we're going to cut spending. And it's like, well, okay, but you increase the defense budget by $150 billion, right? By the way, Doge never looked at the DOD. What happened there? You know, like, whoa, where are you, Doge? Why did we fire like somebody in the National Weather Service and not someone in the Pentagon who can't pass an audit for 5 years in a row? And so, you know, this is talk, and it was cheap, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, he's totally right about this. Doge came into office with the promises of $2 trillion in government cuts. I think Congress codified $9 billion. They're clearly not serious about this. This led to the schism between Musk and Trump, and I think Musk was more right about this. Regardless of any reservations you have at Musk, they clearly weren't interested in saving money, so much so that both Hegseth and Trump boasted about the fact that they were laying down on the table the most expensive Pentagon budget in history, a budget that, you know, isn't even as much as the interest payments on U.S. debt anymore, but still is about $150 billion that more than the one that Biden laid down. So yeah, with Saagar on this, 100%.
They increased the defense budget, and instead, you know, they put work requirements in Medicaid and in food stamps. I'm not necessarily against work requirements per se, but really what bothered me was the way they were increasing the dollar shift to the states. This is really wonky. I apologize to everyone, but the end result is that more people could probably lose healthcare and or food stamps. Again, we can have a conversation about welfare and food stamps and all of that, but it was the priority of increasing the defense budget, of extending the tax cuts, which are pretty overwhelmingly good for the top 1%.
Help people overseas, it seems, at the expense of.
Exactly. So helping people overseas, and you got people who are at least precarious, you know, in terms of that. So I think that the bill was a big miss, in my opinion.
On the simple promise of make America great again, it seems life for most Americans is not as.
I think that the fundamentals still remain the same, and that's the problem. Is I don't see a concrete way to fix that. So yesterday, a report came out from the National Association of Realtors that the average first-time home buyer in the United States is now 38 years old. It used to be 27. And look, Trump can't just wave a magic wand and fix that. To the extent that he can do anything, it's to fire the Fed chair. And I guess, you know, let's give him credit. He's trying to do that.
Yeah.
Agreed, although I've looked at the other governors of the Federal Reserve Board who would be likely successors, and there's not many better hawks when it comes to interest rate manipulation here. They're all kind of cut from the same mercantilistic cloth when it comes to that. Ending the Fed is the real solution here so that we don't have a central bank manipulating the currency, setting the interest rates. The interest rates would be set by the market. And then, you know, we wouldn't have all this malinvestment and inflation. The inflation that's overtaken the U.S. system, especially since it went off the gold standard in the early 70s with the end of the Bretton Woods system. That's what we've seen.
But my point is just that the GOP as a whole and that bill did not seem laser focused, you know, on those problems. So I would say I don't think it's gone very well. Then, you know, on immigration, I mean, look, it's controversial. I wait for Andrew. I would say of all the things that he, quote, promised to do, that's the one where he really has, you know, I think he's delivered. The problem, in my opinion, is like the way the administration decides to conduct itself is kind of like an Iraq, like shock and awe approach, where you come in with these big operations. Now, I will explain the logic. The logic is because there's 30 million people here probably who are illegal. Deporting them all, even with billions of dollars, is like probably impossible. So you want to stage these like large scale things to get people to self-deport. And then about 1 million people or so, according to the administration, has left. We don't have a way of checking those numbers.
But some of the self-reporting stuff is just stupid and madness. It's like gun buyback programs. Which individuals actually go to those Democratic administrations and sell their guns? They're in minuscule numbers. Guns are exploding in the country. And I think you see the same with immigration here. Now, it's true what he says about how immigration figures, you know, how illegal immigration is calculated. And I don't see how you can fully calculate that, by the way, if it's illegal immigration is much lower. I have no reason to doubt that, actually. But what Trump's also doing is he's taking, you know, these mass deportation plans off the table, because Saagar's right. That'll never happen with the number of illegal immigrants in the country. And he's replacing this with selective deportations specifically for critics of Israel. Like he wanted to do even with legal residents like Mahmoud Khalil. We saw that story play out. And some others where, hey, they just want to send them to the worst prisons in Honduras. That's basically what we're seeing. These selective deportations that have only thing to do, not criticizing the U.S., but with criticizing Israel. That's what we've seen. Immigration's not a particular issue of passion of mine. People that watch this channel probably know that, but that's my I think fair-minded assessment of where this is at right now.
Which is why it's kind of difficult. But I would put it all together and I would say that the story to me is just chaos. It's like one that flips back and forth. We have Doge, which is in power. Elon's the co-president. Then he leaves, right? And now he's, talking about Epstein files and the America Party. And then we bomb Iran very shortly afterwards. We said we weren't going to do that. And then we had the tariff brouhaha, like in between. It doesn't feel as if there's like a steady hand on the wheel, chaotically, I mean. And I would apply that to immigration as well. The biggest criticism Americans have right now about the immigration policy is not even necessarily deportation. It's the chaotic way that they feel it's being handled. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Like, why were people so mad at Biden over the border? Because of the chaos at the border. Yeah. And let's give Trump credit. He did fix that. Yeah. There's zero illegal crossings. Yeah. Fine. But the point is now,
again, it's hard to understand how you could calculate that if they were illegal and out of the sight of the feds. But again, I do think the data suggests that they are much lower. If only as a disincentive drummed up by Trump, the appearance being to, prospective illegal immigrants being, hey, this guy actually means business. I think that psychologically is having an effect.
Now they look at the raids themselves and the way they're conducted and kind of like blown up by the White House as chaotic, right? And I think that when you put that together with the way that the tariff policy, the immigration policy, and even the war policy, I mean, we were negotiating with Iran and then we weren't negotiating with Iran. We berated Zelensky in the Oval Office and told him he didn't have the cards and we're giving him more weapons. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And then the Epstein thing is, well, you run on it, you say you have it, now you say you don't have it. It screams like chaos and kind of incompetence. And I can see why a lot of people are moving against it. So
Totally agree with that. As from a dissident standpoint, I totally accept that. A lot of the dissidents that supported Trump are telling me in their in the comments sections, these are the types of issues moving them away. The Epstein story, the schism on spending, bombing Iran, rearming Ukraine. All these things play into doubts that Trump is going to fulfill the promises that dissidents wanted. Not necessarily Trump hardliners, but yeah, it's chaotic. If anything, the whole Iran debacle was chaotic, where it went from, we're negotiating with Iran for better relations, to, well, no, Israel's actually going to strike them, but the U.S. is going to stay out of it, to, the U.S. is going to strike Iran and bomb them in 3 selected places, but it's going to be awesome, to, if Iran doesn't make itself great again, why not there be regime change? That's pretty darn chaotic, and a lot of that played out in the period of 48 hours. So, yeah. That's what I'm seeing in terms of foreign policy and lots of other things.
That's like my wholesome.
What grade would you give him? Well, that sounds all bad.
Me personally? Yeah. I mean, I would go issue by issue. So like on foreign policy, I would give an F just in terms of Ukraine and Israel. On immigration, considering what he ran on, I would probably give him like a B+, just because on the merits, I think he actually is doing almost every single thing that he said he would do. If anything, I would say my criticism, I mean, but to be open about it, I'm very pro mass deportation. But my criticism of it is that it seems like in many cases they went more for the show as opposed to like the policy. Yeah. And I think that's the problem. So
yeah, I mean, Trump's the ultimate showman, right? He's a showman at heart. He's a salesman at heart. Let's make a deal. Let's make a grand spectacle of everything. It's kind of indicative of the guy at the heart of this whole thing, as to, overpromise and underdeliver. But at some point that's going to bite you in the butt when you have, dissidents supporting you for thinking that, you're a transformational president. And I think he really had the, potential to be that if he really wanted to. He has amazing control over his base in Congress. If he would have said like, hey, no, this spending problem is a serious issue. People like Massey are right. We have to get this under control. I think he would be listened to. A lot of people say MAGA is a cult. I don't think we're actually seeing that in regard to the Epstein story, but in some other ways, like the spending bills, they are getting in line for the most part. So, yeah, I mostly agree with Saagar here, and the showman critique is I think very true.
Like my
They said
personal
they were going to
criticism,
target
but a lot of
criminals, and they're
people,
not.
and also the reason I will not give it an A is because a huge portion of the immigration machine was used to go after these like pro-Palestine students for speaking out against Israel. I'm like, yo, fuck that. Sorry. Okay, that's a total, not only a free speech concern. It's like, why are you using the resources of my government to deport critics of another country? What?
Exactly. That's what I just mentioned. I couldn't agree more with him on that. It looks selectively applied, which it is. It doesn't even appear that way. It just is.
People who are here legally, this is the least of our problems, all right? But let's put that, to the side. So on the economy, yeah, I mean, look, this isn't me speaking. Like, people know I'm pretty out of step with like the trickle down GOP, but like, I don't know. I think the big beautiful bill was a disaster. Like not only in terms of its unpopularity, but it didn't, invest in all the things. It didn't invest in making America better, like as a country. There's no massive expansion of manufacturing tax credits. There's no like ability to compete and deal with China. It was really just kind of like a personal tax extension for the rich, more corporate tax extension for business as usual. I think business as usual is what he was elected to like go against. So for me, it's like a C. So you can average all that together. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, mostly agree with Saagar. I wouldn't say it's just a tax extension for the rich. It was a tax extension for everyone impacted by federal taxes. The rhetoric on the left, and I guess with Saagar in this case, is that it's for the rich just because, the rich pay the lion's share of income taxes. It's a progressive tax. So the people at the top of the spectrum are paying by far way more of the federal taxes in terms of income than people not making as much money. And it is true that some people effectively pay $0 in income tax, but even those people are being, hit like crazy with things like capital gains taxes, property taxes, consumption taxes, sales taxes in their own state, licensure taxes, all sorts of other fees within their own locality, and saddled with this burden that's crazy. But overall, I think Saagar has a fair-minded assessment of Trump here, and dealing with the Epstein story. For Trump to call this a Democratic hoax after the Democrats were literally basically silent about this issue for all 4 years of Biden's term and didn't actually use it as a weapon against Trump is just retarded. No one believes this. What they did pull out of the toolbox to use as weapons against Trump is, Russiagate, that hoax, that's absurd, that no one believes, and it's even more exposed now than ever when that memo came out a few days ago that shows, in fact, the Biden administration was aware that it was bogus from the start, and they still went forward for it for 2 or 3 years, talking about it endlessly, how it was as big of a story as Watergate. That's what they used against Trump. It's a farce. Then they also used the Jan 6 insurrection narrative, the idea that, these patriots, or, from the Trump perspective, these patriots that some of them created a riot, most of them didn't. Many of them walked into the Capitol, which, by the way, should not be an offense when it's the people's house. Don't call it the people's house if you can't walk into it. People could do that, all the way up to like Warren Harding's administration. He'd invite you to his poker game. But not only that, but it was unarmed. But did you see the lectern that they carried away? They carried away a lectern. Democracy hung in the balance that day. They almost overthrew the republic. It's absurd. No one believed it. Even the hardest core leftists didn't believe it, but they had to just, parrot that line. And I shouldn't say leftists, I should say liberals, because distant leftists did see that for what it was. So, Trump has not done a good job on Epstein. But, it'd be wrong to say he overpromised and underdelivered, because I think the promises were just a farce from the get-go. I think that they knew some of what would have been had on the Epstein case because the investigation started during his first term. It wasn't during Biden that Epstein killed himself or the raid happened. But again, the Democrats didn't touch this, so this isn't a Democratic hoax. And for Trump to just say, hey, we're going to, try to get some of the grand jury testimony to be unveiled, well, it's not much of a satisfaction to those that wanted the whole kit and caboodle, the whole shebang, the whole Epstein files that your administration promised. Some of those prominent people, the activists stuck their necks out for, like Kash Patel to be the FBI director, that they promised. For Dan Bongino to get there after saying, like, hey, this is going to ruin the Democrats. Pam Bondi to say that you had thousands of hours of children being molested by Epstein to sift through. And then all of a sudden, Nope, I guess I was mistaken. That was just child porn. It's just not convincing to anyone, and it never will be. I don't think that this is going to help Trump at all. I think this is creating the biggest of Trump's schism, even though you could say that, you know, this issue might not be important to as many voters as, say, Ukraine is or the economy is, etc. This is an issue that, you know, it went to the heart of Trump's original mantra, you know, drain the swamp, which, again, it's not really talked about that much anymore because it's become a meme, I think. In general, I think that's why Trump's team has abandoned that slogan. But this is emblematic of completely violating that creed or mantra to begin with. But I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know in the comments below. Is Saagar right? Is he making a fair assessment of the Trump administration handling other issues and the Epstein story? Do you think that this is going to create a serious schism and hurt the Republicans in the midterms? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Flagrant 2. This was an awesome interview with Saagar. Saagar's a really smart guy. We disagree on some things, but mostly he's great. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. Click the join button below. That will help the channel, and you'll get access to all my videos before they go live on Facebook. Not Facebook, on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.